You have got to be freaking kidding me. When you just think that AEW is going one direction, they take you in a completely different one, and that is what they did at the end of AEW Full Gear. It was a main event that was violent, it was bloody, it was outrageous, yet it was magnificent. The finish was questionable, yet AEW comes in there and swerves all of us. We never saw it coming, and they once again deliver on pay-per-view. Now, let's set the scene. It was Samoa Joe going in there having a violent and bloody steel cage match with Hangman Adam Page for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. Samoa Joe wins the world title, okay? I'm a Samoa Joe fan, wasn't really thrilled about the finish. Why? Well, I'll tell you. The reason is because of all the outside interference. First, you had Powerhouse Hobbs get involved. You had Shibata get involved. Eddie Kingston got involved to the point where the door was open. Then you had Hook come out there. He turned heel. He aligned with Samoa Joe. He's the one that hit Hangman Adam Page with the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. He's the one that ultimately led to Samoa Joe winning the championship after hitting a muscle buster to Hangman Adam Page on a championship. He got the 1, the 2, the 3. And that's where it looked like we were going to go off the air. It was something in which I wasn't a huge fan of. I love Samoa Joe. He's one of my favorite wrestlers, but I didn't like the constant outside interference. And I had a lot to say about that, but two AEWs try to, they come in there and they savage the day. They go in there and they have a massive return in the way of Swerve Strickland. He comes out, new music. I'm not a fan of it. I like his old music better, but hey, to each his own. And then he comes out there and he lays waste all the security members. He and Hangman Page stand tall. So clearly, it's either going to be Swerve versus Joe at World's End in December, or they could do a triple threat match if they wanted to wait and hold off on that and have all three competitors into that. But that's the way that AEW Full Gear 2025 went off the air. And let's get into the rest of the show. AEW Women's World Championship, Kris Statlander, Mercedes Moné Part 2. This was phenomenal. I would say that their first match was probably just a little better, but that's just, picking things apart. But it was Kris Statlander who retained the women's championship. I expected Kris Statlander to retain the women's championship going into this match, and I think a lot of other people did as well, because you can't have Mercedes hold all these championships from all these different promotions and then have her win the women's world championship and then have her lose all of these other championships and then the women's world title. Or you can't have her lose the women's world title and then have her lose all these championships. She can't be women's champion if she's TBS champion. She can't be the women's world champion if she's champion of all these others. She has to have a downfall before she captures it. It's that one title she can't win. That's the story that they're telling. And they're telling it very, very well. It may not be your cup of tea. It may not be my cup of tea. But that is the tea in which they are serving us. And I think as long as they keep doing what they're doing, we're on the right path. And in the process, Mercedes Moné, who does get a lot of flack from a lot of different people, some good, some bad, you have to know that Mercedes is doing everything in her power to get Kris Statlander over. And that's respectable. And that is good business. And I think as long as she can keep helping others, I think AEW is in a really, really good spot. What happens when you put $1 million on the line for a trios match? Well, you get a babyface turn. You get a reunion. Yes, the Elite, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, they are back and better than ever. It was $1 million trios match. It was Kenny Omega, Jack Perry, and Luchasaurus teaming up to take on the Young Bucks and Josh Alexander. This was a spot monkey fest. This was exactly what you wanted out of a Young Bucks match. They always deliver. They are one of the best tag teams to ever do it. And it really wasn't the match that I think people will be talking about. Instead, it's what's happened after the match. So after the match, Don Callis, he declared that the Young Bucks were part of his family. He grabbed the money, walked the Bucks up the ramp, and tried to distract them as the rest of the Don Callis family attacked Kenny Omega. But the Young Bucks saw this. They didn't like this, and so they opted to walk down, turning their back on Don Callis, and made the save. They shook hands with Luchasaurus and Jack Perry, made right with them, and then we were waiting on Kenny Omega. And Kenny Omega initially opted not to shake their hand. Instead, he wanted a good old-fashioned hug it out moment, and that's exactly what AEW gave the fans, and they got to hug it out. And now we have the Young Bucks not only as baby faces once again, which was a welcome change, but now we have the Elite. Now that we have Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. So I can see them going after the Trios Championships. I think that would be fun. We'll see what they end up doing in the end, but it's nice to have an angle like this on a show in which, well, a marathon. So we had a fatal four-way match, which was interesting. We had Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa, and they took on Megan Bayne and Marina Shafir. And then you also had Julia Hart and Sky Blue teaming up, and you had Harley Cameron and Willow Nightingale teaming up. And they worked hard to win over the crowd, including me. I could care less about this match. And I think a lot of people did because there was no real reason to care. Now, Toni Storm and Mina, they scored the victory. As a result, they have earned a tournament match stipulation, which means when they face in the semifinals of the ongoing women's tag team title tournament, when they face Marina Shafir and Megan Bayne, they'll have a stipulation that they can choose. If they don't win these tag team titles, I'm not even sure I don't know the point of these titles to begin with, but I really, really don't know if they don't win the titles. The technical pay-per-view opener was Darby Allin versus Pac. The reason I say that is because AEW did the ridiculous, well, we'll carry the pre-show match of a CMLL trios bout that no one cares about into the main show. So it was Pac and it was Allin, and they went out there and they worked hard, and basically it was just Allin hitting a bunch of ridiculous spots, throwing his body on the line, and then we got a finish. All right, Allin hit a drop kick off the top rope onto Pac, who was sitting on a chair. There was a spot where Allin was tossed from the ring apron to the floor and splatted like a freaking fly. If Darby Allin is trying to outdo Mick Foley, well, congratulations there, son. You've already done it. So you might want to scale back on some of these stunts. Regardless, Pac went over. There was a distraction by Wheeler freaking Yuta, and it was Pac who hit him with a baseball bat in the face. Got the 1, the 2, the 3, and walked out with the victory. So we had the Casino Gauntlet match to crown an inaugural national champion. Now, it was Ricochet who came out on top, and okay, look, this is a championship in which completely unnecessary. I think most people would agree with that. This is not an anti-AEW take. This is just a pro wrestling take. There's just too many titles out there. No one really cares about many championships outside of the big ones, right? The tag team titles and the world championships and etc., right? This championship, we'll see. Obviously, it's too early to tell where it's going to come when it comes to prestige. But you had Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, Claudio, Orange Cassidy, Kevin Knight, Mike Bailey, Daniel Garcia. But in the end, it was Ricochet who pinned Kevin Knight for the victory to become the inaugural champion. When it comes to AEW, they will deliver blood. If it's a John Moxley match, he will give you blood. And that's exactly what happened when John Moxley took on Kyle O'Reilly in a no holds barred match. And it was interesting because the way that they started this match was not on my bingo card. They started out with a technical style, and typical AEW fashion, they hold a bloody no holds barred match and then they follow it up with a no disqualification match. But we'll get to that in a minute. Look, it was violent. It was a John Moxley match, right? There was a fork. Okay, both men bled. You had, John Moxley stabbing his opponent with a fork, stabbing in the hand, the head, the nipple. What are we doing here? But it's actually Kyle O'Reilly who tapped out John Moxley. Moxley continuously loses via submission. I don't know why we're putting Kyle O'Reilly over John Moxley, a multiple time former AEW World Heavyweight Champion, but hey, it's Tony's promotion. He's going to do what he wants. FTR versus Brody King and Bandito, one of the best matches of the night. These guys went out there and they were trying to make a statement. FTR had a chip on their shoulder to remind everyone that they are truly one of the best tag teams in the business. And that is what they certainly are. These guys went out there, they busted their tails, they went out there, did a bunch of near falls, probably did too much. But at the end of the day, this is AEW. And everyone tries to top each other. And these two teams proved without a shadow of a doubt that they are two of the best tag teams, not only in AEW, but in the entire pro wrestling industry. And props to them for doing so. Props to them for going out there and shining. It was FTR. They hit the Shatter Machine on Bandito to get the win. And it was a very, very good match.